Welcome to Bear Tracks, the official podcast for Butler Community College. In each episode, we feature inspirational and lively conversations with our graduates about their memories of student days, stories, challenges, and career highlights. We have so many alumni who are leading change and innovation in their respective fields around the world. And whether you're a recent graduate or a seasoned professional, we hope you'll find inspiration and new perspectives through the conversations we have on this show. Thank you so much for joining us and enjoy the episode. Welcome back to Bear Tracks. My name is Hayley Hobbs. I'm your host, and today I'm really thrilled to have our still very brand new Vice President of Academics on the podcast, Dr. Barry Robinson. Dr. Robinson, welcome to Bear Tracks.
Oh, thank you, Miss Hayley. It's a pleasure to be on Bear Tracks and get to chat with you this morning.
Yeah, I appreciate your time. I wanted you on early, but not too early, because like I said, you are still new with us at Butler. You just started back in August of 2024, and we'll get to that time farther down the interview. So before we do, please tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, kind of your background and the journey that got you here to being a Grizzly at Butler.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Well, let's see. I think I'll start off with, kind of a generalization of my research days. I am a trained clinical neurovirologist, meaning basically I study how viruses affect the body. And my specialty was HIV peripheral neuropathy, which just oversimplified means that I studied how HIV affected your sensory mechanisms, your sight, your touch, and things of that nature. And as the disease progressed, how those senses kind of diminished. So from there, I had an inkling that I wanted to do something in higher ed because I had an aunt that she's always tried to push me to teach. And then I had another aunt and my mother that wanted me to get into the medical field. So between the two, I think jumping into research for a little bit and then transitioning over into higher ed was a good mix for both of them to kind of satisfy everyone instead of just, heading down one path or the other. But to get to the point of me transitioning over to higher ed, I had reached a pinnacle in my research days where I had to either start up my own lab or continue down the path of following other people's ideas and labs. And I wasn't for sure at that moment if I wanted to lead my own lab or if I really wanted to continue down that path. So an opportunity came up at one of the local community colleges in the Seattle area to teach biology, nutrition, or anatomy and physiology. And so I wanted to teach the easier ones, which is biology and nutrition, but they ended up giving me anatomy and physiology. And so I took off from there teaching that and then ultimately spread into microbiology, environmental science, and then basically all of the, what I call the pre-med courses. And then from there, I started my journey in community college system. And then I started working my way up. And then here I am. And it led me to this area because my mom was in a situation where she started to need me around a little bit more. And I tell people I drew a circle around Louisville, Kentucky, because I didn't want to be too close to family, but close enough that if I had to, I could get back there within less than 24 hours to deal with whatever emergencies or whatever it was that came up. And Kansas fell into that area. So I started researching Butler because they had a posting open. And I kind of fell in love with the area and what I had read online and reached out to some colleagues to get a little bit more feel for what the college was like and just said, okay, I'm going to give it a shot, and went through the process, and here I am. That's the oversimplified version of my journey.
The too long didn't read version, as the kids would say, TLDR.
There you go.
Location, obviously very important, but was there something specific that you learned about Butler and our mission that really attracted you to the job?
Yes, it was. And thank you for that question. I kind of left that out of my explanation. One of the major things I would say is the family atmosphere and the true focus on success. And when I say success, not only for the students, which a lot of higher ed institutions should and need to be, but Butler actually showed that on its websites. But then it also showed that Butler also cared for its employees and staff. So not only was the success geared toward students, but it gave me the feel from the information I got from colleagues through reading on the website that Butler had this family feel to it, that they portrayed and actually, we'll say, initiated the steps to say that everybody on this campus has a hand in student success. And what that means is everybody on campus is dedicated and focused on making sure that every student that comes through their doors ends with a successful track. And we help them get there. We help them navigate the system. We provide the resources that's necessary in order to help them get from point A to point B and have the credentialings that they want, or whatever it is that their goal is, to either get the degree here, transfer, or jump right into the workforce after receiving the best training that they can here at Butler College. So researching that, hearing that, and then going through the interview process where I actually saw the interactions between the staff and the, we'll say, administration, it just reeled me in. And then to top it all off, just the overall feel when I was walking around campus and feeling that energy. It's a feeling that you know is for real when you get the comments and get that energy like you're a part of the family. It's almost like you've known people for a long time, even though you've just met them. That's what I experienced when I came here to Butler, and I wanted to be a part of that, and I'm glad that Butler selected me in this position.
We're glad too. I don't have a true working experience outside of Butler. I've worked here for my entire career, but you've had other experiences at institutions. Do you feel like that is something that's unique to Butler, or is that something you've found throughout your career in higher ed so far?
Great question. I mean, I can say that a lot of the institutions that I've been at, they have a similar feel, but you'll have the little cliques and things that, you'll find cliques in every institution. I think it was just more obvious here on day one than in other institutions. Other institutions, it took me a little time to get that feel, or to, I guess you can say, connect with the right people to kind of have that overall family feel. But Butler was an instant thing that I felt during the interview process, through the virtual interviews, all the way up through the walk around when I came for the forums and had that on-campus experience. So I'd say I think it's very unique here in that it exhibits that from day one, nothing that you have to kind of build yourself up to in comparison to some of the other institutions that I've been at.
I love that. I do get similar responses from almost everybody I've interviewed so far for the show, and I think it just hits home and reiterates that this is a place where that is real and not just talk. It's actually something that we do put into practice and put into our everyday work at Butler. Before we move on to kind of your future goals for what we're doing in academics at Butler, I'd like to ask, what is your favorite story from teaching that you could share?
Teaching. I would have to say it was dealing with this Vietnamese gentleman, or I think he's Chinese Vietnamese individual that was in my class, and he was struggling with anatomy and physiology and microbiology. So I sat him down one day and just asked him, I was like, so what's your ultimate goal? Why are you in school? And he mentioned that his family wanted him to be a nurse, and, because that was a good career for him and that he could help the family out. And I said, okay. I said, that's what the family wants. I said, what do you want? And he mentioned again, he was like, well, all my friends are heading in nursing, so I want to do it too. And I said, that's still not a good reason. I said, you got to let me know what you want. I said, I understand that your friends are going down there. That's what they want. And you may be trying to follow them, but that may not be where you really want to go. I said, and your family, I think your family wants you to be happy and successful in whatever you choose. And I said, nursing and being a doctor and a lawyer are worldwide. That's what everybody knows is a good career, makes a good living, etc. I was like, but what I want to know is, what is your passion? What do you want? And he's paused for a moment, and I said, you know that there are lots of other things in the medical field that you can actually dive into and still have a nice living. And I started naming off some things, and I said, well, look, why don't I give you this list? I'll give you some resources that you can look up other medical careers. I said, we'll meet next Friday. And this was like, I think on a Monday or something. I said, let's meet next Friday, and then you can tell me what you like, and I can help point you in that direction. Well, to speed this story up, he ended up falling in love with radiology. He liked having that close-knit relationship with patients. He didn't want to go to school for long periods of time, and he wanted to have kind of like control over his work environment, which radiology kind of gives you that piece. So I directed him to another institution, not the college that we were at, that had a radiology tech program. And I said, well, this will get your feet wet and you can experience what it's like. And if you like, you can go as far as you want in this field. He ended up going through their program. He finished with honors. and then ended up getting job offers before he actually graduated. And his family loves him to death, and they think the world of me. They think I was pretty much the person that kicked him off on the right foot and got him into this career. So they call me still whenever they have problems to kind of help them out, because they think I can help solve all the problems in the world, which I keep telling them I can't. I just helped him find his path, and he took it from there. So I think that's one of my favorite stories from being an instructor back in the day.
That's a great story. Yeah. I mean, I think externally people look at roles in higher ed and it's like, oh, you teach. Well, what we know, especially at the community college level, is that our faculty do so much more than teach our students. They are very involved in their success personally and, to a point where it makes sense for them to be. And I think we all have a faculty member from time at college or university that did something like that for us. And so I wanted to highlight, because that is a great story that I love to hear you tell.
Yes. Well, thank you. Thank you again.
So let's talk a little bit now about academics at Butler. In a similar vein, I think that people who don't live and breathe higher education like you and I do probably think academics stays pretty static at that level of education. And the reality is that it's one of the most nimble divisions of the college, because it has to be, because so many things change within academics. Can you explain a little bit how you've seen things evolve maybe in the last 5 to 10 years in higher ed academics?
Ooh, that's a great question. There's been a transition due to some of, we'll say, the normal college age students. So when we had years back, we had a nice little recession that caused a lot of families decide not to have as many kids. So as a result of that, we have the normal range of 18 to 21 year olds is starting to now hit us. So some of the enrollment decline was due to that. It started, give or take, about 3, maybe 4 years ago. You started to see the normal college age students start to decrease. And then we started transitioning into trying to get more adult learners back activated so that we can kind of make up that difference. So now we're in this crunch stage where I think we're starting to see it kind of come back. I think we've hit the bottom already and we're starting to go back up. I think it's estimated that around 2036 or so is where we'll start to see that normal flux of the 18 to 21 year olds that we consider normal college age students coming back in a little bit higher numbers. But I would have to say that within the last couple of years that there's been a major shift, because society in general is starting to wonder, do you really need a degree in order to be successful? So you go from strict academias where we think of more of the hardcore, we'll say math, science, kind of future-driven individuals. And we can also use like nursing and be in the pre-med, pre-law path. You see a slight decrease in some of the interest in those areas, and people are trying to get that more hands-on. So your career technical education programs are starting to see a lot more students, are attracting a lot more students, so that they get in, they spend that time learning the skills, they go through their internship processes for that hands-on experience, and then just jump right into the workforce and start making money. One of the transitions within the last 2 years or so, I would say, is the cybersecurity realm. Cybersecurity, when you mention that, just think of, in general, anything that can connect up with the world through internet, et cetera. That's going to have some type of security apparatus or application to it so that it protects the users on both sides. So that's so vast. I mean, we really can't narrow it down and say these are the jobs that you're going to have in cybersecurity, because it goes from everything from your municipals all the way up your personal hand cell phones, personal laptops, all the way through industries and just you name it, anything that can connect up worldwide. So that trend now is still in phase, that we're getting a lot of students that come in through those hands-on programs. Here at Butler, we got an awesome culinary program. We have a great cybersecurity program. I mean, we're just trying to come up with all the things to stay, we'll say, fluent in whatever the industry needs and whatever we think is going to help our students be successful in the end. So we're well connected in industry at all levels through our advisory boards, and also just basically being involved with our partners, industry partners out there for extern internships. We gather information from all of those resources and try to adapt and adjust our curriculum. So that those students are successful from day one, that they get that training that they need, they get the education that they need, they figure out how to use the applications of what's taught in the textbook to that real life experience. And that way we train them not only to deal with today's problems, but the future problems that we don't even know exist right now, by giving them those critical thinking skills and the research skills that if they do run into something that they don't understand or know, they know how to look up from reliable sources to be successful. And I think that's one of the things here at Butler that makes us one of the, what they say it is, the second largest, but the first best, I think is the saying that goes here.
Yes.
But that's what does it. I mean, our faculty are very involved, as you kind of mentioned earlier, in the success of the students, trying to get them prepared, making sure that they have those resources. And I mean, like I said before, every person on this campus is helping students be successful in their educational journey. So I thank you for asking that question.
Yeah. And it leads into my follow-up, which might still be a little early in your tenure at Butler since you haven't even been here a full year yet. But do you have a vision or some goals you're ready and trying to implement for the academic programs moving forward?
Oh, yes. Yes, we are. I know right now there's a huge mental health need in the communities. So that's one of the areas that we're starting to work on and trying to provide that resource for our community. Another thing is to strengthen some of those partnerships that I was talking about earlier. I'd like to get it to the point where some of these partnerships actually help us on a funding level, maybe by sponsoring, let's say, building a lab for us or funding a lab for us, maybe even taking on some tuition costs for some of the students. And if we do the tuition costs, we don't want one industry partner to take all of those best candidates from that pool, but kind of spread the love out and maybe form some type of consortium that would help out with that. Things of those nature, I would like to kind of jump into and get more, I always call it love in the community, but that might be a word that I probably have to tweak every now and then because that can be misrepresented or misunderstood in some cases. But I think that's the general gist. And I like to work with the faculty and the deans to try to find out what we need to do in order to enhance our programs and make us stand out a little better. So I'm always taking suggestions and looking into new things based off of the open door policy that I have, where people can just swing through and come in and say, hey, let's sit down and talk about this. And what are your thoughts? And we brainstorm it out. Sometimes we run with it. Sometimes we do a little bit more investigating. And sometimes we realize, hey, that's something that we're not ready for at the moment. So I think that's what my goals are for right now. And it'll probably change as I get more involved with the Butler County community. And the future is always open for change. And we're trying to be innovative and keep up with those changes.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's the community part of community college, not just our internal Butler family community, but the community we work in and that we serve, and that in turn can see us as a resource for employees and, economic revenue and stuff like that. And I think we have a really strong base of support in our Butler County community and the surrounding ones. And so we definitely can capitalize on some of that, I think, under your leadership, which is very exciting.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
So something that's kind of internal, again, that would probably be interesting to people listening who don't work in our field is professional development, continuing education for faculty. What's your approach to professional development for your faculty and your academic staff?
Oh, that's a great question. And I think it's, on one hand, it's actually a difficult question. What I do is when I meet one-on-one with my deans, I ask them, what is your future goals? Some of the deans, they want to expand on basically like their leadership skills. In that case, we brainstorm on different, we'll say, programs, workshops, or training that would actually do that. And actually, we're doing a dean's retreat coming up soon. We're actually going to go through processes so that, one, we can work better as a team. Two, we can actually work more efficiently as leaders. And then three, be able to communicate both internally and externally a little bit better. So by reaching out and having discussions with the faculty and staff, I try to find out as much as I can about what their goals are. What's their educational background? What are their desires? And where do they want to be 5 to 10 years down the road? My theory is nobody should ever stay stagnant. They should always be learning and always trying to enhance either their own skills or we'll just say their lifestyles. And based off of that, those type of conversations is how I'll kind of try to direct them. With the faculty, sometimes it's more about teaching techniques, conferences, things of that nature, because conferences are very valuable as well as like workshops and other training, because you get to interact with your colleagues around the nation, sometimes around the world, and you can share ideas and bounce issues, if you want to call them, or concerns that you have in your area and how they kind of dealt with it in their areas. And that whole exchange of knowledge and information during conferences is very valuable. So a lot of the times that's what I'll send for the faculty. And then there's other faculty that, maybe want to explore a little bit more, maybe take some trips or do some type of relaxation because life can be very stressful. So we have those conversations as well. So as far as professional development with my team, it's more or less me asking them questions and then brainstorming on how to help them fulfill whatever it is they're trying to obtain as far as knowledge or experience. And then I try to find the funds for it, and we send them on that journey so that they can obtain that extra credentialing or extra training or extra knowledge and whatever it is that they want. And I think that's kind of the best way to handle it, rather than me forcing something on my team saying, hey, this is what I think you need. I basically ask them, what would you need in order to fulfill your desires?
I think it's that old adage of, what if you invest in an employee and they leave? Well, what if you don't and they stay? I mean, you don't ever want to not try to grow somebody if they want that growth. And that's especially important in academics where, like we've been talking about, things change on a probably weekly basis, curriculum and just the general atmosphere of what's being taught in college. And we're lucky we have a faculty development office even, so
Yes.
they are supported in that way internally, which is very cool. I'd say we are very fortunate to have something like that.
Yes. Now, if I may add one more thing to that, is some people will say that they don't want any professional development. They'll say, I'm fine with doing whatever. But then as you talk to them more, you find out, hey, well, you're curious about this, or you're interested in that. Would you like to have a little bit more knowledge of that area? And they're like, well, that has nothing to do with my job. And it's like, your professional development is more than just about your job. If you are happy learning something else, then that happiness kind of spreads into your job, spreads into the workplace, and it makes it a more creative and enjoyable work environment. In my opinion, that is also considered professional development, because you're creating an atmosphere or an environment that's more productive and more welcoming to students and everybody else. And I think that's what's needed. So it's not necessarily that I would be forcing anything on anybody or forcing people to take things. It's just having that conversation again and maybe showing them that they do want some type of additional training in something or knowledge in something, so that they can be happier in the workplace overall to create that welcome environment.
Yeah, it's easier for us to lose sight of the holistic view of our lives affecting our work. I think you're speaking exactly to that. It's part of me having started this podcast. I felt very strongly that Butler needed one. We have amazing stories to tell. We have fascinating and fabulous people internally to feature, like I'm doing with you today. And that has added an element of creative fulfillment for me, because I love my job and the foundation. What I get to do is amazing, but this is a side project that I took on, other duties as personally assigned, like we do in higher ed. But I have already gotten to speak to some amazing alumni, and it's making me remember and reinforcing why I love to work at Butler. Not that I ever lost sight of that, but it's always good to reinforce.
Yes, ma'am. And thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah, well, everybody needs to hear such things. There's more out there than your everyday, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
What's one of the biggest challenges, or some of the biggest challenges you see facing not just academics maybe, but also community colleges in general? How do you think you'll address some of those things?
Oh, that's something that I've been working on since day one, coming here to Butler, especially transitioning from Washington to Kansas, which is slightly different in many different ways. But I would say here in Kansas, one of the things is dealing with some of the state legislation. We have several initiatives that are coming through that might affect us we'll say, at our funding levels to a large degree, in which we're trying to stay abreast of all of the information in current discussions as well, so that we can prepare ourselves just in case. And if some of these initiatives get, we'll say, pushed through, for instance, there is one called the First 15, which means that any high school student can get their first 15 credits free. And the legislation wants us to have it totally free. Each of the 19 colleges currently have some form of that, but it's not totally free. They'll give you tuition free, but then you have the student fees and the books, et cetera, that the students have to pay for. This legislation wants it all to be free. So there's no cost to the books, no student fees added on there, and free tuition. And we all know that nothing in life is free. It always has some type of cost. So as we prepare for that, we're trying to figure out if this is going to be a mandate or not, one, and then two, if it's going to be unfunded or some type of funds associated with it. So we have to be prepared either way that goes. And as far as we're looking at it, is we're trying to figure out the best way so that the college isn't hurt from this adventure, if you want to call it that, but also still be able to be prosperous in there. And yes, the enrollment is starting to, like I mentioned earlier, starting to come back up. But if you offer that many credits for free, it's going to have a financial dent in any college. I don't think I care to say that even if your enrollment is going up, giving away 15 credits per student of any size is going to cause a huge financial debt, anywhere from, we'll say, several $100,000 to possibly even several millions of dollars, depending upon the institution itself. And that's one of the things that we have to address. And we're still working on a plan to try to curb that if that comes into play here in this upcoming year.
Yeah, that's going to be a big one. We're having that conversation in our office as well. How do we support the college as the foundation through that endeavor if that comes to pass? So that's just one, not even a little example, but one example of a lot of the things that kind of bombard the college monthly, yes, weekly, daily, and always the need to be able to navigate through those things, pivot to continue to support student success, because that is, of course, the most
yes,
important thing we do. And how do we do that while navigating those things? So we will see what comes of that.
Yes, ma'am.
So I think we're close to wrapping up. I want to ask you, what's one really great thing that's happened so far while you've been at Butler for all of, 8 months?
It's both on several levels. I can give you a personal one, then I'll give you one related to work. Well, actually, I'll do work first. I'd say the bonding aspects with the students. I think when I first came here, it was more of, who's this guy that's walking around trying to chat with me and talk to me, et cetera. And then it's kind of transformed into this me attending or getting invited to attend a lot of the student functions. I've been getting invited to, like, they just had a movie production that a couple of the students made called Don Killer. I got invited to come in and watch that. And so I whenever students invite me to things like that, I try to make an effort to actually make it. Some of the athletes have invited me to come, watch them play their games. I've been there for that. Some of the headliner individuals have mentioned their concerts, and I try to make it when they add and invite me. So I'd say that is one of the positive things, is being invited to these student events and watching the talent that we have here on campus. It's spectacular. One of the things I like to do in my personal time is attend some like theater, Broadway plays, et cetera. But we have a great set of students here. We got their talents is just phenomenal. I love it. Then on a personal note is when I first came, people knew that I love getting out into nature. So at first they started teasing me about leaving Washington to come to Kansas. And then on that note, they would say, well, Kansas has a lot to offer as well. And then they started making suggestions. So these suggestions are going to be my spring and summer events coming up. So because I was told that, coming in August, you're at that tail end. Plus I was trying to learn my job and get familiarized with the campus, et cetera. So I didn't have extra time to wander around and, take full advantage of the Kansas scenery. But I say those two events are the highlights, I would say. People teasing me about leaving Washington, coming to Kansas, and then providing the nature that I seek here in Kansas and saying, hey, try this out. You'll like it.
Both states are beautiful in their own way. I've been to Washington as well, and of course it's gorgeous, but being a Kansas raised and born girl, there's so much beautiful Kansas for you to see this summer. So I'm excited for you to experience that.
Yes, ma'am.
And nowhere has sunsets like us.
That's what I was going to say. The sunrises and sunsets, spectacular. I used to sit up every morning when I first arrived here and watch the sunrise and then watch the sunset. And it's just like breathtaking. So, and I get to see the stars.
And you get to see the stars.
Yes.
Was there anything else you want to leave the listeners with before we completely wrap up?
No, ma'am. I just want to thank you again for reaching out to me to let me share my story and share my adventures thus far here at Kansas, and especially being here on the Butler Community College campus and just allowing me to give kudos out to all the faculty and staff that's here. They're doing a spectacular job, and I can't wait to continue to work with them and see where our innovative minds will take us in the future. Because I know wherever it takes us, it's going to be for the better of the college and especially for students. Because our faculty and staff, like I mentioned before, are very dedicated to providing the students with the best environment to be the most successful that they can and help them get to wherever point B is for them and what they call success. And I'm glad I'm a part of that. So thank you again for inviting me to the podcast. And I look forward to interacting and working toward the future with Butler Community.
As do we. We're glad you're here, and thank you for your time. And thanks for being on Bear Tracks.
Thank you all.
Thanks for listening to Bear Tracks, the official podcast of Butler Community College. We hope you found the conversation as entertaining and enlightening as we did. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform, and don't forget to visit our website or email us at beartrackspodcast@butlercc.edu for more resources and opportunities to connect. Thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to bringing you more thought-provoking conversations on the next episode of Bear Tracks.